Welcome into Floyd Street's Finest. I am Jack Grossman. That is Holy Cross head coach Mark Lieberman, former Louisville assistant, part of the Field of 68 podcast network. This is Floyd Street's Finest, talking everything Louisville basketball. You can like, subscribe, comment, review, all that stuff on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you find this stuff. You can find me on Twitter at Jack Grossman97, Coach at Coach Lieberman. Coach, you guys in finals week now, or is it starting winter break? You getting there?
Yeah, it just finished today. The finals started, so we can now practice. I can do 3-a-days, a la Coach Pitino, and go for 4 hours in each session. So that's the beauty of it. We actually have a pre-Christmas tournament and a post-Christmas tournament coming up. So got our guys coming in a little bit for practice, and but I would gladly trade places with you as I just see the remnants of a palm tree and the beautiful weather that you are enjoying, as I am the polar opposite, literally and figuratively, as it is freezing and snowing here in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah, last full day of paradise down here. It's been quite a trip. Grossman family hadn't done something like this in a very long time, but it's been 75 degrees, sunny, clear skies, just relaxing on the beach. It's been incredible. It's been my 1 week of paradise.
It's
Back to
absolute
reality.
bliss. Yes.
Coming this weekend. Then, if it makes you feel better, I'm going to be in Chicago for work over New Year's, so I'm gonna be feeling that cold too as well coming up here. But Louisville had the big rivalry game last Saturday against Kentucky. I know it's been a few days, but we have gotten a chance to react to it on the podcast, so I want to get into that. Obviously, they have the week off. They play Florida State coming up on Saturday as well. That's going to be a big test for them. But, Coach, we'll start with the Louisville-Kentucky game, a game where I thought both teams played really, really well. Kentucky shot the lights out. Chucky Hepburn, Terrence Edwards were absolutely phenomenal for Louisville. Cards hit 14 threes in the game, took generally good care of the ball. What did you see from that game, and how, even though Louisville lost, I came away really impressed with how the Cards played?
I was impressed with them on the offensive end. The ball was really, they moved it well. The cuts, we talked about that. They cut hard from the offensive standpoint. I would say the biggest thing was, especially early on, was defensive transition. And that was the biggest thing that Louisville, it's not enough to get back. You have to get setting the floor, spacing, and running to open spots. And Louisville got caught a few times not stopping the basketball, being late in some of the actions. And then you had a situation as well where you had early on where Rain Smith was caught like on some screens, and they looked like they were attacking him early on. So you had situations where, look, it's 19-14, and you can't just rely on Chucky just to do everything defensively. There's times that he was sprinting back, but they're relying on him to stop the ball, and they're out of the position, and that's just, you don't have a man in transition, Jack, and it's 19-14. Rain Smith goes under a ball screen, and you have a situation where there's a three-point shot. Early in the game, you saw Kentucky was like, okay, let's expose Rain somewhat on the defensive end. Jackson Robinson comes off an early curl and just hits a jump shot because Rain Smith gets caught on that screen, and there's not a lot of showing. And then one time Kentucky comes down, and on their zoom action, they just get a back cut. You have Hadley and Rain, and I'm not trying to pick up Rain Smith here, but come together. There's a slip and a dunk for them as well. So I was impressed on the offensive end. I think it's something where, you're not going to see many teams that are that good offensively as Kentucky is, Jack. I mean, they're just so efficient. So you're not going to see that as you move through the ACC. You've kind of already gone through the gauntlet of Duke and Kentucky from that standpoint. And the ACC offensively, you're not going to see that. But I do think Louisville is going to continue to have to work on the defensive end so they can just understand that there's going to be nights when they're not going to go 14 for 39, but they're not going to be as efficient in scoring 85 points where they're going to have to get some stops.
Oh, for sure. And I really thought that, you mentioned it early, especially when Kentucky built that 12, 14-point lead. I think it was a 12-point lead at one point, but they really struggled getting back in transition. It was very, very apparent early on. Like, okay, Kentucky saw something here. They can get out in transition. They can play with pace. They can get some easy buckets on their offensive end. And Louisville didn't force a lot of turnovers, only 11 in the game, and what was a high
Right.
possession game
Mm-hmm.
either. And we've seen that a few times now. When they're not forcing turnovers, they really struggle to make an impact on that end of the floor. And that's where, other than Chucky Hepburn, who, as you said, can't do everything by himself, especially with how Kentucky plays and how many guys can facilitate and handle the ball and initiate offense for them. That's something that you need other guys to step up in that spot as well. And they really, as we talked on the preview podcast last week, really were able to take advantage of Rain Smith, both in terms of the off ball movements, the dribble handoff, the zoom actions, and also a couple times he got caught on switches with Andrew Carr, Mari Williams on him as well. And he just really kind of struggled on that end of the floor to kind of stay with things, I felt like.
Right. It's not just to layman the point that it was Rain
Right.
Smith. It's a collective effort.
Right,
But you're
right, right.
talking about Kentucky in transition, and one of the things is they just do such a great job of sprinting their lanes. And look, if you're not getting an offensive rebound, it's almost Virginia-esque. If you're, Virginia under Tony Bennett was sending everybody back. Maybe in hindsight, you look at that type of game, the opportunities to get offensive rebounds, and Louisville was able to get 10 offensive rebounds in the game. But when you don't get them and you follow rebounds instead of just chasing after them, all of a sudden you're compromised because now Kentucky has the advantage in transition. And it really is a difficult thing because Kentucky has a lot of guys. It wasn't just as lights out as Butler played. It doesn't have to be in his hands in transition. There's a lot of guys that can bring it up and they share it so well. So when you have cross matches and it's not your guy, and identifying that early and pointing and talking, which is where I think Louisville really struggled in the transition game. Then all of a sudden you're kind of compromised and there's an extra pass and guys running to the rim and you're just not locating guys. So really it's almost a situation you got to pick your poison. Are you going to go to the offensive boards and just try and get second and third shots, or are you just going to get your guys back to be set? And kind of Louisville was in between, and the speed and the efficiency of Kentucky in transition was apparent.
Because I'd say I like Louisville crashing the offensive glass, especially since Saturday aside, they shot the ball a lot better from three. But even when you shoot the ball well from three, you're 14 to 39. That's what, 25 missed shots. Do you have opportunities to get second, third opportunities for? Or we've talked about a lot, long shots equal long rebounds, to where I'm fine with Louisville crashing the glass. But you still got to show that effort, intensity, and really make sure you get back, because you can't just give up easy bug after easy bug. What was it, 24-4 on fast break points on
Right.
Saturday? And that was really what buried them early and kind of created this insurmountable mountain for them that they got close to climbing a bunch of times, but just could never really get over the top, tie the game, make it a one possession game consistently to really throw the game pressure back onto Kentucky.
No, when you get 40 points in the first half, like Louisville did, but you're giving up 46. And look, it's not that they were all bad shots, but any type of, especially for Kentucky, and their mindset is a missed shot is the first pass of a fast break. So immediately, that ball is not sticking. They're not pivoting. They're just getting that ball outletted. Guys are running, and they have a lot of guys that can handle the ball. And great offensive teams are great passing teams and great cutting teams. And so Kentucky definitely fits under that category. And when you pass and you just get out and go and they don't take an extra dribble and they can advance the ball like they do, look, that's something that it's hard to replicate in practice. And then you're going, you're in that and you're working on get back drills, you're working on just matching up and so on. Sometimes those cross matches, guys get that at one moment where you get confused and all of a sudden we saw that early. And that was the biggest thing. I thought that was so evident in the first half, is that you had situations, even that time when James Scott is trailing the play and he was banged up on it. But again, pointing and talking and identifying that. And what you want to do is force a second or third pass or a second or third dribble. It allows your defense to recover and get back to their gaps and understand that. Louisville just wasn't able to do it.
And the other thing I'd add is when you give up a few easy buckets early, that's how a team can gain confidence, and that basket just starts to expand. It looks like it just really looks big there, especially when you have a lot of capable shooters, which Kentucky obviously does with how well they run offense and how many open looks they're going to get anyways. You give them a few layups in transition, that's a dangerous game to play. That's what we saw, even Lamont Butler, who hadn't played in a week and a half since he injured that ankle in the Clemson game, comes in, has the 33 points. Is
Yeah.
obviously the most extreme example of it. But I mean, he was a dude that hit 7 threes all year coming into this game. He hit six in this game. How do you let him get comfortable? Easy baskets early in the game can kind of lead to an explosion like that later, which is really what I thought we saw. Because Louisville was better defensively in transition in the second half, but they still had a lot of miscommunications. They let some guys open, but they let Kentucky get really comfortable on the offensive end early in the game. And I think that kind of, other than the actual score, led to them just having to battle uphill throughout the entire evening.
Look, you're allowing a team to shoot 58%. It's always going to be a tough struggle. I don't care if you put up 85 points. There's got to be stops. There's got to make things tougher. And again, you hark back to what Chucky can do, and it's just a matter of you don't have a rim protector now. James Scott is he's going to develop into a very good player. Again, the speed of everything and going up and understanding these matchups and just being just maybe a half second late on a show or on a tag and all those type of things that Kentucky does very well, and the ball pressure that's needed, especially in the zoom action, to make the guys just to blow up plays. It's just they're so efficient, Kentucky, in that. And then you have a situation where Louisville just, again, from a depth standpoint, it was a factor. And this was where it reared its ugly head, the fact that you're playing seven and you just don't have the horses that can just continue to do that, because not only do you have to be so efficient offensively, which they were, and I thought we had talked earlier about their cutting, their actions, and so on. I thought they were really efficient. They were screening better. They were cutting hard. But now you have to guard some of the actions. It's not like you just have to guard some teams that run a high ball screen and you can force them, a certain side, and guys can be in gaps and understand. You're guarding movement, and that's hard to guard. And you're guarding cutters, and everybody for Kentucky can pass, can cut, and score. And that's a really difficult matchup for Louisville.
It really is. I thought they did because this is another thing we talked about. Would Louisville be able to hold up for 40 minutes? I was impressed that they didn't fold. They kept battling back, and they never really went away in this game, which was really impressive. But they just, as I said, they just couldn't get over the hump. It felt like every time they had a chance to, they had the three possessions where they got within three in the second half. They had, I thought, honestly, the biggest stretch of the game was the end of the first half where Louisville had battled back. They were within four. Javon Hadley's
Mm-hmm.
at the line with about 40 seconds left, front end of a 1-and-1. You hit both free throws, you get a stop going into halftime, and you're down two with the ball coming out of half. You have a chance to tie or take the lead at that point. Instead, he misses the front end of the 1-and-1. Butler hits a layup at the buzzer. You go in down six, which is still not insurmountable. You can overcome a 6 point deficit, but that's a much different feeling after the way they had kind of clawed back into the game after being down by 12 early. Instead of, if they were down two, then you're saying, okay, we're literally a bucket away. We're right there. To where if you play the type of second half that they ended up playing, where it was very back and forth, very even, Kentucky would stretch the lead out to 9-10. Louisville would come back, cut it to 3-4-5. If you're doing that when you're starting at a 2 point deficit instead of a 6 point deficit, you're exchanging the lead. There's a lot more game pressure on Kentucky. They're the team that's supposed to win. Maybe they tighten up a little bit there, which UK never did, but I don't think Louisville really gave them the chance to, because they were never able to other than the couple times they got within 3 points, they never got the game tied. They weren't consistently in a one possession game to where Kentucky could just kind of play with that little buffer zone that they had throughout the second half.
Yeah, let's give credit to Kentucky on just how good
Yeah.
that they're playing, and I think you're absolutely right. Louisville certainly battled back, and every time there was a run, and it wasn't just off of okay, a timeout's going to save you. Louisville had that resiliency to battle back and fight and to compete in this game, which was again a credit to what they have, playing seven guys and playing heavy minutes. Chucky Hepburn plays 39 minutes. I mean, in this game, and asking him to do everything, and he goes 50% from the field. And again, how disruptive he is and whatnot. So, him fouling out as well is a factor.
Yeah.
But look, it's a point of he's going to do everything he can. And I thought for the most part, you had guys competing and playing hard. It's just a matter of okay, going into this, it's a tough team to guard when you don't have that kind of depth, and you really, as talented as Louisville roster is, there is some deficiencies on defensive end and guys that really can contain the balance and then just staying with cutters and so on. So, you know, and they don't have her, but he's not going to be all comfortable banging and being a guy that defensively can guard consistently in the post if you're just going to isolate him in that situation. So that's what Kentucky was able to understand and take advantage of. But yeah, I thought the Louisville effort was valiant, and it bodes well for them moving forward. They're just going to clean up some things. I don't think they're going to see a team like Kentucky,
No.
in the ACC schedule. So this is a situation where this is going to help them as they move forward, and hopefully into to tomorrow's game. This is again a situation where you're just going to guard. You're not going to see that kind of complicated action, all the reads that Kentucky does. Where now, okay, we're going to be able to take some things away as we go into the ACC slate.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing. Like looking big picture on this game, it says a lot about Pat Kelsey and the program that he's trying to establish here. That you're going into Rupp Arena playing a legitimate top 5 team that already had wins over Duke and Gonzaga in the previous month, and you're playing with 7 guys because of all the injuries. You had the foul trouble. James Scott fouling out with like 12 minutes left.
Right.
Edwards picking up his 4th foul with 11 and a half, 12 minutes left, and you have all these things going against you, but you were still able to compete. You were still able to put a really good product out on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Louisville would have gotten blown out by like 15, 20 points, especially after the start of this game, it's all we talked about going into this was Louisville needs a good start because you don't know if they can hold up for 40 minutes. They got to get out to a big lead and just hope they can hold on. They had the exact opposite happen. Matt Kelsey had to burn a
Yeah.
timeout down 14-5, 2.5 minutes into the game.
Right.
So if they would have just laid down and lost by 15, 20, people would have been angry. But at the same time, they would have fallen back on all these built-in excuses. To actually be able to battle back and make this competitive, I don't want to do moral victory Monday. That's not what Louisville fans want to do, especially when you're losing to your in-state rival Kentucky. But in this specific situation, I think you can show a lot of the program he's trying to build and where they want to get to. And as you said, they can learn a lot from this and the Duke game as well and say, yes, even though we didn't win, we didn't have all the guns. We didn't use that as a crutch or an excuse. We still competed and gave ourselves chances to win the game. To where you go down the line, you're playing ACC teams that aren't nearly as athletic as Duke and don't run nearly the same type of complex offense that Kentucky does. You have a chance if you can build on these efforts. You can win a lot of games in that league and give yourself a chance to be an NCAA tournament team.
Oh, no question. So you're exactly right, Jack. You have a situation where you look at Louisville, and again, you're proud of the effort of Kentucky. There was never, you saw it from body language, and I'm looking at all the little factors. There's nothing there that would say, okay, this is a team that's giving in. Same thing with Duke. When you have a lead, it's just a matter of, all right, you're out athleticized, or there's just things that, hey, from a depth standpoint, it's not there. But you go moving forward, you could put a spin on this that, okay, we're going to be in every single game and that we're going to have. In fact, watching North Carolina, that's another winnable game for this team.
I agree.
You're looking at the schedule and you're saying, okay, we're not going into a game where we're going to say, okay, we really don't. This is going to have to be a, just an absolute. Everybody's. I think what Coach Kelsey's done, and yeah, I'd be proud of our ACC slate. Is going to be a situation where we can absolutely earn ourselves a double bye. I truly believe that. You look at, and having even watched the Pitt team, I mean, you're looking at 2 teams maybe in that conference that are all right, that a Duke and maybe a Pitt are locks for somewhat for the ACC or for the NCAA tournament. Other than that, Louisville's in good shape moving forward.
Yeah, and I'd say the good news is for Louisville, because the biggest question I think for them is going to be is, do you have the resume? Do you have enough good wins?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't, and we've talked about it ad nauseum. They don't have a lot of chances to do that, but you do get Pitt twice, who's in the top 15 in the net. So those are going to be very, very critical games for them. You only get Clemson once, but you do get them at home. So that's going to be a quad 1 game. Carolina needs to battle back into that top 30 to be a quad 1 win, but that's a name with cachet, name brand, to where Louisville has a really, as we talked about, a really critical month here coming up where they have the Carolina game, the first game at Pitt and Clemson as well. The question is, this Florida State game is an interesting game too. That's a quad 2 game where Florida State has a good run in the ACC. That could end up being a quad 1 win. Two, they're going to have to piece these things together. And that's where games like Ole Miss and Tennessee, that can't happen anymore. I mean, we've seen this team compete and win games in the Bahamas. We've seen them compete with Duke and Kentucky. We saw them compete with Oklahoma. You can't have these one-offs where you just don't show up. We've seen they can compete now against the best teams in their schedule. Now they got to do it on a nightly basis.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Look, as much as you take the Bahamas wins, and those are going to be good wins. And having watched Michigan kind of, they're up three with, and it's funny, Jack, and I'm just going to pivot for a quick second here. Just
Do it.
watching teams and being around it, it's amazing how many teams don't have their special situation packages and understanding that because, Michigan's up three, fouls a 3-point shooter. He makes the shot, hits the free throw. Oklahoma, wins that game. And it's just like, you're just almost to the point where that could come back to be a big boon for Louisville in the long run, depending how, Oklahoma continues. But it's amazing how many teams aren't watching a lot of college basketball over the last week and a half, special situations and the games. That's something that, the macro for a lot of coaches, they're putting in so much scouting reports and special teams for me are end the game situations, out of bounds, all those type of situations, because you weren't sure if Michigan was going to foul there, and it kind of jumps out on a shooter and just trying to foul him early anyway. Just
So
the
what
basketball
do
and me,
you
basketball
what do
coach
you
and
do in that situation? Do you have, because I know Rick Pitino, for instance, usually does not have his teams foul up three. Do you want your guys fouling up three? If you do, what's the situation you want for that, or would you rather say we're going to D up, try to make you hit a contested tough
college
3-pointer in our
basketball.
face?
2 seconds to go when Oklahoma had the ball and they're coming up the floor and whatnot. But then you have where, okay, are we? Do we want to? We call it X. It's always X. So we would have it. We'd have a shell and we'd almost guard the 3-point line, and we're switching every actions. And for us, all right, we're going to put pressure on the basketball, and as soon as they cross half court, if it's 12 seconds or less, then we're going to get into, okay, that's a situation where we might foul. And sometimes you want to wait till 8 or 7, but that's things you work on. But you had a situation there where it was about, and again, I might be off by a second or two, but it was about 9.6 seconds to go when it was good action. There's an open three, guy closes out, hits the shooter, and you have a 4-point play. And that's a situation where, okay, at that point, you've got to make up your mind. Are we or aren't we? And so that's something, but you can't just do it in the middle of a game, Jack. That's something that has to be practiced over and over again. It's got to be just something that's drilled into your guys to understand what we're doing in situations. Because come tournament time, you don't want those type of things to happen. So you have to know what you're doing. We always have a designated fouler if it's going to be a situation where they're bringing up the ball. If it's like 8 or 9 seconds left and we're up 3, then we're going to have what we call X, and the player who's named X, number 12. John Smith is X. We know he's going to be on the ball. He's going to reach as soon as it comes over half court. And we're also telling the officials, we're trying to foul, so they're not going to get the shot. And that's a huge part of it, too, because you want to let the officials know what you're doing, so they're not going to call in the motion of a shot or so on. They know what you're trying to accomplish. And high-level officials on.
I would say I got a couple thoughts on just the whole foul up three thing. Since you're allowed to do it, I think it's incredibly smart because, I think it's a lot less likely that they're going to be able to make the first, miss the second, get the offensive rebound and a putback. But as a fan of the sport, I would much rather that not be the case. I think it's more exciting and more fun when guys are actually shooting threes, have the shot in the air to try to tie the game, send into overtime, win a game, that type of stuff. I wonder what
It's
your thoughts
exciting
on
for
the
you if you're on the other end. Yeah,
yeah.
if you're losing, and you want to get a shot, introduce the Elam ending at some point to college basketball. Go ahead.
I don't want the Elam ending in college basketball though, because I like it. I think it's perfect for something like the TBT or like an NBA All-Star game, that type of stuff. But for college basketball or the NBA, I love the organicness of a buzzer beater when it happens. And I think that would take kind of the specialness away if it happened every game. But I would rather, I want them to find a way to eliminate the foul up three in terms of like, let's say if you're clearly trying to foul someone, make it an intentional foul, give them two shots in the ball, then you're only up one, and that's a much scarier situation than being up three. Or, making it a three free throw foul. Or you said, you tell the ref, hey, we're gonna foul. So if he does the motion in the shot, don't give him the three free throws. My response to that would be if he knows the foul's coming and he's smart enough to shoot the ball as he's getting fouled, that should be treated as any other shooting foul. He should get three free throws and a chance to tie the game. I'm not saying you're wrong for that
Well,
because
I wouldn't argue
the
with.
no, go for it.
No, I wouldn't argue with that, but
Yeah,
that's something that you teach and you go over. We're not going to try and shoot a guy in we're not fouling a guy in
right.
the motion. We're letting the official know that we're going to foul before he gets that motion when they're in their dribble handoff or they're running their actions or whatnot. Yeah, you've got to be. I agree with you on that one. That's something that you have to work on as far as making sure you're not fouling in that motion. And to your point, Jack, that's something we work on too. So if we're in the other side of it and we have to shoot and we're shooting free throws and we're down and let's say there's not enough time for us to foul them again. Let's say there's 1.1 seconds on the clock and we're down three and we're shooting two free throws, right? So obviously we want to make the first one. And something we do is we hold up the fist, either left or right, and we work on that. And you're going to miss left or right, and we're going to have the ball side. If we're going to miss left, then the offensive rebounder in the free throw line is going to push his guy down, and the guy from the opposite side is going to loop around for a tip in. Those are things you have to work on. Those are end of game situations because we want our guys to understand, hey, there's always situations that you can do if a team's going to foul you to try and get that tie up. If it's not just going to be a 3-point shot.
Yeah, I think what I'm thinking though is you see a lot in college, and especially the NBA. They're really savvy about this. They know the foul's going to come, and even if it's off a dribble handoff, you'll see a guy just go and chuck the ball up as he receives the
Mm-hmm.
ball on the dribble handoff, and the foul comes. They never reward the guy with three shots. And I'm sitting there thinking, yes, the guy would is only shooting because he thinks he's going to get fouled, but at the same time, if you're in the shooting motion, you should be rewarded with the three free throws. And that would eliminate, I think, if they were to call that, that would eliminate some of the fouling up three. Because again, I agree with you. It is absolutely the smart strategy because it's a lot less likely the team's going to be able to overcome the 3 points if you're fouling up three. But I think it, in the name of excitement of the game and trying to get exciting finishes, I think they should tweak a few things and police just that one aspect of it a little bit better to try to encourage, a chance for guys to actually have a shot up in the air to tie the game.
That's the beauty of sports, isn't it? That we all can have our thoughts and our ideas and what we believe is the way it should be, and that's the beauty of it. And that's part of look in coaching. You want to be as over prepared as you can for your guys to under every situation. So if you're in that either one, down three or up three, your team knows, and you don't want to go to that bench and say, okay, this is what we might try. You want to be able to have prepared your team for that. All right, we've been here before. We've practiced this. This is what we're going to go into. But to your point, Jack, that's the beauty of it. We've had I just countless times Dick Vitale is screaming, foul, foul, don't let him get the shot off. And there's guy, look, right? And the old Memphis and Kansas, right? No foul.
Yeah.
And there's the big three for Kansas and so on. And you can go back in history and just see that. So there's beauty of that, but I'm sure if you're going to ask Calipari that, is he going to foul in that situation now?
I'm sure he will now.
1,000%. Right. So, so like if it doesn't happen to you, it's kind of, it's great to romanticize it and go over it. But yeah, if you're going to be in the thick of it, you want to make sure you're in that situation. As beautiful as it is to see that rainbow three go in there and tie up the game and hear the roar of the crowd and all that stuff is beautiful. I'll take the W.
I don't blame you. And again, like if one of my teams is playing them, I want them fouling up three. I'm just thinking more of a casual
Yeah.
thing. Let me ask you this, Coach. Back on Louisville and Kentucky, because
Mm-hmm.
Louisville only had 7 turnovers in this game, but I felt like they just all 7 of them came at just terrible times for
Yeah.
U of L. A lot of, as you like to call them, turnovers for touchdowns, and
Mm-hmm.
it felt like U of L trying to overcome this mountain, trying to get over the top, and really again apply that game pressure to Kentucky. They just had two, three times where either the Waterman pass that got picked off and Edwards commits his fourth foul with 12 minutes left. That was a part of a 7-0 run that took the game from 64-61 to 71-61. Louisville never got back within a possession. One possession game after that point. You think about the Oway steal and dunk late in the game to push the lead back up to 9 or whatever it was. It just felt like every time Louisville turned the ball over, it wasn't like a dead ball turnover, a shot clock violation, or something where it's like, that sucks, not ideal, but at least you go back and set your defense up. It really aided in Kentucky
Mm-hmm.
getting out into that transition game, which Louisville struggled so much with, as we talked about at nauseum early on.
Yeah, look, those were critical turnovers for sure. What we had talked about, look, you had they only shot 21 threes, Kentucky. Now they made 11 of them, so you're shooting
Yeah.
52% from the 3-point line. And we talked about it where, okay, they're not going to live in their fears. They're going to take something away. I just think it was, and you and I, with the key points of this game, being efficient offensively and really attacking Kentucky and being able to just be more, whether it's attention getting cuts, the screening game, the passing, the shooting, all that stuff was there for Louisville, right? So, yeah, the turnovers, look, they only had 7, but they were critical turnovers. But the point we really did just take a deep dive into was just how critical their transition defense was going to need to be. And that's probably the biggest thing that Coach Kelsey and his
Yeah.
staff are just lamenting right now and saying, you know what, that's something that we'll have to understand that that's moving forward and always in that series. That's always the way they're going to play. And regardless, you look down, maybe a Carolina is a team that gets out and runs and certainly not as efficient because most of their stuff is going to be random ball screens and pitch to heads and guys driving and attacking. So it's not a similar type of offensive type of situation. But, the keys to Louisville and not really helping us much even off the post. And Kentucky was able to attack that way. So, look, you only have 7. I don't think that was certainly wasn't the end all for why Louisville wasn't able to be successful opportunities for offensive rebounds, but we're going to get set defensively and still be able to run our stuff because they were efficient. When you shoot 45% from the field, you're still an efficient offensive team. So, look, you can go back and critique certain things. I don't think the turnovers were the biggest factor. I just think it was in the half court, guarding certain actions. You look early on, and it certainly was. You can see that Kentucky was coming out and saying, okay, we're going to put Rain Smith in a lot of actions. We're going to put this team in a situation where they're going to have to switch. They're going to have to talk. They're going to communicate. Because we saw that early on, even against Bellarmine and Winthrop, there were situations where transition defense wasn't there and some of the communication wasn't there. So don't think that Kentucky wasn't going over every minute and every possession offensively of other teams against Louisville and saying, okay, these are ways we can attack them. And you saw it come to light. So that's something Louisville's going to shore up. I'm sure Coach Kelsey and his staff understand that. And I think they'll get better at it because that's going to be the key for them moving forward, just the defensive transition.
Yeah, I'd say that's been a common theme now to where they gotta guard the off ball stuff better. They gotta guard, all that
Mm-hmm.
action, all the cuts, all the screening. Because we said, we saw it against Bellarmine earlier in the year, especially. We saw it, even though Tennessee doesn't run a lot of complicated stuff, they really struggled with that floppy action they ran early in the year. Those are places where Louisville has to get better. And the good news for them is they had a week off before Florida State to probably that's all they worked on, I would assume. And then they have another week off after Florida State for Eastern Kentucky to where this is kind of your last chance with extended break to say, okay, we got to get better. I want to ask you about this, Coach. One last thing on Louisville, Kentucky. The skirmish, the little skirmish that broke out there with about 5 minutes left in the game. I thought that was a really, first of all, I just, for the rivalry, I mean, I don't want to say, like, fighting's good, all that stuff, but it kind of reignited a little bit of the flame. I felt like that we had kind of lost throughout the Kenny Payne last couple of years and all that stuff, to where it kind of felt like, okay, this is Louisville, Kentucky again. We're back to kind of how things are supposed to be. And it also, I felt like it changed kind of the tone and the air in Rupp Arena to where if Louisville could have gotten a bucket on those next couple possessions, I really felt like that would have been their last opportunity to really, really shift that pressure back on Kentucky because Kentucky, kind of were front runners. They built the early lead. They were kind of just holding on to it throughout that. And you kind of felt like the Rupp Arena crowd was more celebratory more than anything. They weren't really taking Louisville very seriously, it almost felt like. But then the skirmish happens, and it's very much like oh shit, they're here. They're actually going to fight. And it almost felt like, have you ever watched the 30 for 30 about the Lakers and the Celtics?
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a
Yeah.
silly
You remember?
question.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. But phenomenal. It's a 4-part documentary if anyone hadn't seen it. But they talk about the 1984 NBA Finals and the Kevin McHale clothesline game about how the Lakers were blowing Boston out of the gym. They were about to go up 3-1, probably win the title. And after the clothesline, it turns into like a half court, guys are pushing and shoving and beating each other up. And this wasn't to that extreme, obviously, but it just felt like it kind of became more of a scrap fight, more of a rock fight, a little bit less of a thing of beauty there for those next couple minutes to where Louisville had 4 shot opportunities on their next couple possessions. They got an offensive rebound on each possession. Chucky Hepburn ended up hitting a couple free throws on the third trip down to cut the lead to 5, but they weren't able to get that game back within one possession again because that was when Owe jumped the pass from Waterman, had
Yep.
to see on the other end for the dunk to push the lead back up to 7. But just kind of, what were your thoughts on the skirmish, and do you think that kind of reignited anything or like changed anything there for those couple minutes?
Well, look, it's Coach Kelsey's fire. It's contagious with his players and his team. And he's built, having seen him throughout the season and just with his practices, he's going to have guys that compete and get after it and so on. And you have competitors. And when you compete every day and you build that kind of identity with his team, and the fact that you're losing to a team that is up the road, and as much as you don't have guys that have lived in this for years, they understand the gravity of that situation, and they don't want to go down without a swing, and not literally, even though it
It was
almost came to
almost
that,
literally.
as Coach Kelsey said. Look, he was talking about Lamont. Goes, I don't know him, and I don't know if I'm calling him on a first name basis, but kind of took a little the Mickey out of it a little bit with some humor. But the point is, he wants that from his guys, and he wants his guys to, like, you don't want guys backing down. You want guys to understand, hey, we're in this. We're not going anywhere. It's no matter what the score is, we're going to compete and battle and do all those type of things. And like you said, you get a chance to almost get it to one possession, and you have that is kind of just exposed. We talked about the turnovers. That one's just so critical, that turnover for touchdown. But regardless, you don't have a team that's just absolutely, there's a lot of times that team could just go away and just say, okay, we can be sensitive and we can just not be in a stance and guard certain things and just offensively still attack because of the score, because of what we're doing. And to have that, from a coaching standpoint, you'd like to see that. Everybody that's been a part of this rivalry understands that, and that's means something. Again, that's something, next year before the game, that's something they're going to show on the pregame show, and that moving forward. So it was, when I say good to see, it's nice that Louisville is going to be competitive and is not going to back down no matter who they're playing.
Right. It's nice to see the fight. It's nice to see, just kind of the animosity that we see between the fan bases, that it does spill over to the players a little bit. Again,
absolutely.
So it's always fun to see. Before we get out of here, I want to ask you about Louisville, Florida State coming up here. We're recording this on Friday, so tomorrow, in terms of that game, Florida State, obviously tons of length, going to throw a lot of bodies at you. They don't have the talent that they had when Leonard Hamilton really had things rolling 4, 5, 6 years ago. But still a tough matchup from Louisville, trying to handle the athleticism, the length, and the size that Florida State will bring you, because they're going to pick up 94 feet. They're going to send you in waves. And I think for Louisville only having the 7 guys, it's a game they really need to win for trying to get off to a good start in the ACC with the resumption of that. And, also their NCAA tournament resume. This is a quad 2 game that could eventually be a quad 1 game if things go well for Florida State in ACC play. How does Louisville attack Florida State, and how do they handle that athleticism? Not quite Duke athleticism, but they are going to throw a lot of size at it.
That's Leonard Hamilton's thing, and knowing him well. He's recruited my players when I was down in Miami, and knowing his staff very well. That's what they want: long, athletic guys who get out and go. Now, on the defensive end, they haven't been the same for the last couple of years, and that's where Louisville can have their offense help their defense.
I think they can punish switches in that game.
Yes, they sure can. And if they can get to the free throw line, that allows your defense to get set. What Florida State wants to do is get out and go. Now, they're not going to be running as much cutters and zoom actions and all that stuff in transition and have a bunch of guys that can handle the ball. They're straight line drivers. They want to pass and attack and find kickouts. So it really is a situation where containing the bounce is the biggest thing, not allowing guys to get paint touches, even in transition. This is a big game, again, for them to get back, like you said, to attack the fact that Florida State's going to switch, run your stuff, really screen well. And I think if your offense helps your defense and be efficient, get to the free throw line, the turnovers just can't be a situation where, all right, you get a travel, you get a push in the back, you get a charge because you're attacking. Okay, at least we can get back and get set. But the biggest thing is not to let this team be active and get its deflections, which is what Florida State loves to do with their length. I think they're going to be okay on the offensive end. It's just a matter of, okay, we're going to limit them in defensive transition, and we're going to make them have to just shoot tough shots. And, you're not going to see an overly complicated Florida State offense. You're just going to see a situation where they're just trying to drive gaps, create some random ball screens as well. But I think Louisville is in a game where take care of the basketball, have your offense help your defense, and just make sure you are sprinting back on every possession, and you're set, and you're guarding, and you're forcing tough twos and threes.
I'd say I like where this game comes from the standpoint of, as we've talked about, we led the podcast with the Louisville struggled getting back defensively against Kentucky. They've had a week off since then. The fact that Florida State's a team that probably your number one priority defensively is get back, don't give up easy buckets. That's something they've been working on all week, to where you get to see immediately them try to apply what they've learned from the Kentucky game, how much they've grown since the Kentucky game. And yes, as you said, they're not going to be running all the sophisticated stuff, but you got to get your butt back and keep them from getting an open layup or a dunk. You got to make them earn everything on the offensive end. If Louisville can do that, I really think Chucky Hepburn and Terrence Edwards, kind of that two-man game that we've been seeing kind of blossoming, not in terms of like a pick and roll or anything like that, but the fact that they can both beat guys off the dribble and really give Louisville that added dimension that we didn't see early on in the year. I think this is a good game for both of those guys to try to get mismatches that they want, attack switches. I feel like I'm almost talking about like an Eric Musselman type ball club like that, because that's really what
You
he
are.
likes to do.
They are similar. They absolutely are. They're not identical, but it's very similar as far as what style of play is. I'd love to see, Javon Hadley, 10.6 rebounds, a good game. I'd love to see him he is a game where he can really attack. I'd love to see him just knock down some threes to get that rhythm going as well. And just see if he can be an X factor for Louisville, just to have that third guy that's just a tough matchup, and it's just one of those things that you really hope that somebody else emerges and just says, okay, this just takes the onus off, where you have a situation where Chucky's just having to create and do so many things, just not relying on him knocking down shots and being as efficient as he has been. I mean, that's going to be a continued thing just because of how great he's been early in the year. Now having other guys just do their part and have more balanced scoring as well.
Yeah, I'd also add, can they continue to hit the three ball they did against Kentucky? They may not be hit 14 of them, but can you hit 8, 9, 10, shoot a decent percentage of it to help you there? Noah Waterman, it was 3 for 9 from three against Kentucky, so you'll take that 33%. But can he continue crashing the glass the way he did against UK with 12 boards in that one? I thought that was the best game he's played as a Cardinal against UK. And can he build on that, start to build some confidence and some consistency there to really give Louisville some much, much, much needed help in that front court?
Yeah, and I think that you mentioned it because Florida State loves the switch. This is opportunities for everything that with their dribble handoffs, looking for back cuts, and Hadley's athletic enough to finish around the rim. He's one of those guys, when you hit on cuts, he can finish and absorb some contact and so on. Same thing with Terrence Edwards. Those are guys that you might see just attacking the basket off. And when that happens, then Florida State gets a little more tentative. Then you can get actions where you get guys going under or being late, and that opens up the perimeter as well.
Should be a fun one on Saturday. One that would be really, really good for Louisville if they're able to get that one. That'd be a great confidence boost and a nice little notch to try to start to fill out that NCAA tournament resume as well. We'll be back next week to talk about that and more for Coach Lieberman.